Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who can make a slinky go up the stairs, Mike Van Bogart.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to all of our amazing listeners for tuning in. Some new Patreon shout-outs here before we get going, so thank you to Kimberly Barber, Adam Bickford, Summer Shears, and Amanda Weber. So thank you for supporting the show over on Patreon.
Oh, Amanda's finally, I know Amanda Weber.
You?
She's a friend of mine through work.
Okay.
And she finally signed. She always says she's a super fan. I'm like, well, you don't have a Patreon member.
Well,
shout
out to Amanda for signing up. Thank you. We appreciate everyone that signs up and supports the show. It's why we have the studio now and why we are planning bigger and better things.
Oh, yeah.
And we are back up on YouTube. So if you want to support us through YouTube, you can go to YouTube subscriptions. You can also support us through Apple subscriptions. Someday Twitter or X will approve our application. I know, Elon's pretty busy right now with SpaceX.
Like
and
catching buildings from space.
All the other crazy stuff he does. So just before we get going, we're going to...
You know what?
Yeah.
I wonder if he does personally just approve each one.
That's why it takes
It's
7
like,
months.
It just sounds like he's a weird guy. Just be like, yeah, I personally approve all
Probably. So just before we get going here, I know people complain that we always take too long, but we're going to...
Well, they weren't thinking about it until you just mentioned it.
Well, now they're thinking about it, but we are going to toot our own horn a little bit here because we are coming up on the 6th anniversary of starting the show, and we thought it would be really fun to revisit, and basically I redid the entire episode because we lost the show notes to the sands of time. But we are going to revisit the first case that we covered back in December of 2018. Back then, we were doing it in my attic at a folding table. Me and Joe were about 2 feet apart.
With two different microphones.
I had a laptop that sounded like a jet engine taking off, and the acoustics were bad. Everything was bad, but we were giving it a try.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the first case. It's Paul Fugate, and just this space that our show is in general. I guess you would call it true crime wilderness disappearances.
Is that like the official name of it?
It's kind of like the official subgroup of true crime now.
I call it outdoor true crime.
I mean, some people call it that. It's the subgroup, whatever you call it. It's the subgroup that is really focused on
recreating.
Well,
outdoors?
It's like a mix of recreating, disappearances, and paranormal.
Okay.
And when we started, no one was doing a show like this, and I guess probably kind of risky for us to hey, let's just create a new subgroup of true crime, because true crime is
very blue ocean for us.
Yeah, true crime is obviously very saturated. There's thousands of shows.
Yes.
And to start a new true crime podcast, you're really fighting an uphill battle against all the mainstream podcasts that, pay to get on the front page of Apple and everything. But so, I was just thinking a little bit about, when we started, and, there were some shows that covered wilderness disappearances before us, once in a while. So Serial started in 2014, My Favorite Murder in 2016, Crime Junkie in 2017. But those were all basically true crime shows that
I've never heard of any of those shows.
Yeah, you have. They dabbled once in a while. But it really wasn't until our show in 2018 where we started just doing episodes, basically a mix of Survivor Man and Unsolved Mysteries. And it was really because of the Missing 401 books that I had read and Joe has read them and got us, really interested in this subject and all the hiking we did.
Yeah.
And, since our show came out, there's been a whole slew of shows just focused on what we do. So Park Predators came out in 2020, National Park After Dark in 2021, and our very own Off the Trails 2023.
Yep.
And many others that I'm not mentioning. And then even the case about Paul, we were the first show to cover his case. No one covered it before us. And then obviously Park Predators did it in 2020.
Which is wild because it's a good case.
It is a good case. It's very interesting. National Park After Dark in 2021, Valley of the Lost and the Dark Swamp in 2022, and then Off the Trails in 2023. And there are a lot of other shows. Those are some of the bigger shows that have covered it. So I just wanted to toot our own horn and, obviously tie this back into thanking all of the OG listeners that have
Heck yeah.
been here for 6 years from the beginning when we sounded like we were talking in tin cans. And
I went back through back catalog and we improved very rapidly.
yeah.
It was only a few more episodes before we really got it going together. And then as soon as we got these microphones, that's when the game changed.
Yeah. Getting these microphones really improved everything. And, the format kind of evolved a little bit, but essentially the format we do now is we did like a prototype in the first episode.
Yes.
Wasn't quite the same, but I don't know. I just wanted to,
We have an interview coming up with Who Runs This Park.
Oh yeah.
Where
that's
we
coming
explain our origin story kind of.
Yeah.
So that's going to be coming out November 5th, I think. So we'll cross promote that one. And then we'll also release the same interview on our feed.
Yeah.
So that will be awesome.
So yeah, just tying this all back into you guys, especially those of you that have listened for a very long time. We know who you are.
Yes.
Because in the beginning we had like 3 listeners.
Yeah.
So
no, you guys are awesome. You've been with us the whole way. So
yeah,
if we start making real money on this, we'll have to like fly them out or something. We'll do something for the OGs.
We'll do a big OG party.
Yeah, that would actually be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
So we'll think of something fun. When we're funded and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Because we're going to start raising money to make this media company happen.
Yeah.
So we'll be ready to do some really cool stuff.
Yeah. So
and then, I'll bring up one more thing. We have a special episode we're going to record with our very own Michelle Medic. She's coming to the studio this Friday, and she's going to be starting a mini series through our podcast called like Missing in Alaska or something. And it's going to be all Alaska based cases.
Okay.
And a few that she's been personally, I don't think necessarily involved in, but has some pretty wild stories. So we're going to initially start with Mike and I co-hosting with her and switching off, and then we'll spin her off into her own kind of sub-series of Gone in Alaska that's part of the Locations Unknown. So that will be
you couldn't
really cool.
pick a better state because there's a lot of cases.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of people go missing in Alaska.
Yep.
So with that said, obviously, if you want to call and leave your thoughts on anything we just said, or just to, insult us, heap praise on us, anything you want, 208-391-6913. Just remember, anything you say on there, we will for sure use it in an episode.
Use and hold against you.
We will bleep out if you mention any personal identifiable information like phone numbers or addresses. So try not to say that stuff. But,
Yes.
Other than that, anything else?
No, let's just gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. January 13th, 1980. A seasoned park ranger at Chiricahua National Monument left the visitor center to check on some trails. When he did not return, the other employees got concerned and went out to look for him. Join us this week as we revisit the strange disappearance of Paul Fugate. So we're going back 6 years in time to redo the Chiricahua National Monument disappearance of Paul Fugate.
Yes.
This is a really good one. We were really inspired by this one, and it's the first one we chose to do the show with.
Yeah.
Little did we know that it wouldn't be that good, and now we need to come back and pay homage to do it again. But a lot of people don't go listen to the entire back catalog on a show that's 6 years old. So,
and we're not like one of those shows that will just repost old stuff like it's a new episode.
Yeah,
we redo it.
And as Mike said earlier, we had to really redo it because we lost the original research. So it's brand new. So Chiricahua National Monument is 12,025 acres, about 19 square miles. It's incredibly small. To give you an example, Chicago is 234 square miles. This is 19 square miles. So the sublocation where this takes place is called the Fairway Ranch area. It was a homestead established by Swedish immigrants Neil and Emma Eriksson in the late 1800s and became a ranch that played a significant role in the early settlement of the area. The ranch itself is located in Bonita Canyon and offers a glimpse into the pioneer life of the American West. So this is located in Arizona. The monument was established in April 18th of 2024, so it was only recently established. During the late Pleistocene era, about 12,000 years ago, or 10,000 BEC, Paleo-Indians hunted large mammals like horses, mammoths, and bison around ancient Lake Cochise in the verdant Sulphur Springs Valley. After the lake dried up, the hunter-gatherers who succeeded the Paleo-Indians began to use resources from not just the valley floor, but also the hills and mountains that surrounded them. Archaeologists call the hunter-gatherer cultural tradition, which followed the Paleo-Indians, archaic, and the archaic time frame is from 6,000 to 1,500 BCE. Once domesticated plants like corn, beans, and squash began spreading into the southeast, the tools people used changed. Southwest. I did say southeast. That's not even a pronunciation thing. That's just I misread it. Between 1500 BCE and 200 CE, recognizable manos and medits show up, as well as large dwellings. By 200 CE, people were becoming more localized around farming endeavors. These close family communities often had several pit houses, ceremonial stations, and some single-use and multiple-use processing stations for hunting as well as processing plant seeds. People made both plain and red slipped brownware pottery, and archaeological evidence indicates that around 1000 CE, these separate family clusters began to gather and form larger socio-political or religious groups focused on the Mimbres Valley in southwest New Mexico. From about 1000 CE to 1150 CE, people began to build above-ground habitation instead of pit houses and make the distinct Mimbres black on white pottery. Some pueblos from the period had over 100 rooms, especially near Animas Creek in New Mexico. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Based on archaeological evidence, it is likely that one or two family groups used what is now Chiricahua National Monument as their home, in addition to using many resources available here. So we'll go into an in-depth description of the climate. So a Chiricahua National Monument experiences a varied climate due to its location at the junction of desert lowlands and higher mountain elevations. So some of the temps we'll see in summer, typically warm to hot, especially at the lower elevation. With daytime highs from June and July, they can reach the 80s and 90s, so not terrible, but it's still pretty warm. The higher elevations, as expected, are cooler, providing some relief from the heat. In winter, they are mild at lower elevations, with daytime highs ranging from 50s to 60s, but nighttime temperatures can drop below freezing, especially at the higher elevations. So snow is possible in the winter months, particularly in the monument's mountain regions. A little bit about the precipitation. Monsoon season lasts from July to September. The summer monsoons bring sudden, intense rainstorms and thunderstorms. These storms can lead to flash floods in the monument's canyons and arroyos.
Yeah, arroyos.
Rain during the monsoon season can account for large portions of the area's annual precipitation. In winter, as we said, it brings the occasional snow and rain, especially at higher altitudes. Snow can accumulate in those regions, but usually melts quickly. So here's a little bit about the humidity and dryness. In spring and fall, these seasons tend to be the driest with the mildest temperatures and lowest humidity. Fall in particular is popular for hiking due to cooler temperatures and less frequent rain. So if you're going to go hike in the Chiricahua National Monument, fall is when you want to go.
Yep.
A little bit about the terrain. It's characterized by dramatic and diverse landscape shaped primarily by volcanic activity and erosion over millions of years. Some of the rock formations, we have the hoodoos and pinnacles. One of the most distinctive features of the monument is its abundance of towering rock spires, known as hoodoos. These formations were created from volcanic tuff, which is compacted volcanic ash that eroded over time. Some of these spires balance precariously, forming impressive structures up to several hundred feet tall. Balancing rocks. In addition to the hoodoos, the monument features large boulders that seem to defy gravity, balanced atop narrow columns of rock. These formations add the unique wonderland of rocks experience for visitors. A little bit about the vegetation. Sky Island terrain. Chiricahua is part of the Sky Island mountain range, isolated mountain ranges rising from desert lowlands. Elevations in the park range from around 5,000 to 7,000 feet, creating a variety of ecosystems within a relatively small area. There's a lot of canyons and ridges. The monument includes numerous canyons and ridges, notable canyons such as Bonita Canyon cut through the landscape, creating dramatic vistas, and narrow, rugged pathways. And last but not least, the forest and grasslands. At higher elevation, the terrain supports pine forests and oak woodlands. Lower elevations transition into the park's grasslands and desert shrub, reflecting the varied topography of the climate of the park. So, just a little about the dangers in the park. For animals, there are mountain lions, or cougars. These are apex predators are elusive but present in the park, so you're not going to see a ton of them. There are black bear that are found at the higher elevations, although just like the mountain lions, the sightings are rare. We have a Coati mundus, white-nosed coati, a species related to raccoons commonly spotted in the park. There are bobcats, white-tailed deer, foxes, squirrels, the Mexican ground squirrel, bats, rattlesnakes, Gila monsters, Sonoran mountain king snake, tarantulas, and scorpions. So I'd be more afraid of all the snakes and
I think
the other things.
Probably the diamondback and the scorpions would be my main concern, and those are easy to spot if you're kind of aware of your surroundings when you're hiking.
If you're paying attention.
Yeah. And
I ain't gonna do any cowboy camping.
No, and coming from experience of hiking in the Southwest and almost stepping on snakes, it is easy to let your guard down.
Yes. I've never seen Ben jump so high when he almost stepped on a rattlesnake.
I didn't know he had it in him. But
just pure adrenaline.
Yeah.
Lots of steep trails, loose rocks, so you want to be careful about that. And cliff edges, you do not want to misstep and fall off those. So some of the things you need to worry about with weather, heat and dehydration. So in the warmer months, just the same thing you could expect from desert hiking. Carry plenty of water, wear sun protection. Flash flooding can be a real issue, especially it might not even be raining by you, but the water can flush down into where you are. So if you're aware of storms in the area, you just want to be aware of your surroundings and where you're going to be. And again, last thing that comes with those storms is lightning exposure. If you're the tallest thing in the area, you don't want to be, because lightning will be attracted to you.
Yes.
So it is very remote and isolated. So there's very limited cell reception in some areas. So you don't want to count on your cell working.
I think it's just a good rule. If I'm anytime in a national park, just plan for no cell reception.
Yes.
It's good for you to unplug.
Yes.
I mean, it's
100%.
In this day and age, everyone needs a few days where you're just completely off the grid.
Yeah, you don't need your phone all the time.
Yeah, whatever's going on will be there when you get done.
Yeah.
So
you go into the park, you come out, we're in a nuclear exchange with Russia. You're like, I've been gone for a day. Isolation is a big one. So this isn't a huge park. It's not a popular park. So if you're going to go hiking, you might not run into people. So you it could be hazardous if you get injured or lost. Some of the trails in the park can be difficult to navigate due to faded markers or intersections with unmaintained routes. It's important to carry a map or GPS device. And there's not a ton of water sources. So this is not a heavily visited park. So some trails need to be beaten down by people to, it's part of Leave No Trace. If we're all walking in one spot, we get a nice trail. But if no one's walking on it, grows back in real easily. So we covered that. to skip those ones because those are like the same thing we just talked about. Biggest thing you want to do, stay hydrated, carry plenty of water. You want to dress in layers. We talk about this a lot. Just because it's hot doesn't mean you should have exposed skin. You lose your water faster. Watch out for wildlife. Be prepared for changing weather conditions, things like the flash floods and thunderstorms. Know your limits. Pick a proper trail and take frequent breaks and at a pace that's good for you. Now, Mike, tell us about Paul.
Yeah, so Paul was born on September 2nd, 1938. He would be 86 years old today. He went missing, like Joe said, January 13th of 1980. His remains have not been found. He was a male, age 41. He was between 5'5" and 5'10". He weighed between 160 and 170 pounds. Hair color, he had graying brown hair. At the time of his disappearance, his hair was quite long. He had a full beard, mustache, and a distinctive widow's peak on his forehead. Kind of trying to describe that. It's like a
Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think of, like Mickey Mouse, Mighty Mouse, anybody. It's got like the point right in the middle.
Yeah. Clothing gear he was last seen in. So he was in a gray National Park Service uniform, shirt with patches and a badge, a bright green National Park Service uniform leather jacket with red lining, jockey shorts, white socks, and green work boots. He also drove a pickup truck. And he had, this made me laugh a little, he had thick granny-style eyeglasses. That was how he was described.
So I remember the first time we did this episode, I was like, why did they say it that way?
Yeah.
Like somebody who did the description didn't like him. I feel like I remember us talking about that. Like whoever did this, like just had a bone to pick.
Yeah. I mean, unless that's kind of the style of sunglasses.
I mean, but they're also not wrong.
So, personality. The best way to describe Paul is pretty much, and when you look at a picture of him, I just picture him. He was described as a nonconformist with a rebellious streak. At the time,
a hippie.
Yeah, it was like a hippie. Yeah, at the time, the National Park Service was very conservative, and I'm not saying like
military
political leanings. Conservative in like how you're supposed to dress. Like you needed to have the high and tight haircut if you're a park ranger.
Yeah.
And you weren't really allowed to have like a big beard and mustache. And he kind of just said, nah, I'm going to do that. So,
yeah.
He also had kind of a Texas twang when he talked. Like I said, he had a big brown beard and a ponytail. And obviously this really ruffled a lot of feathers. I can just picture like the real crotchety old guys that ran the Park Service, probably like, oh, Paul and his ponietail and like, you can just picture those guys. Like,
you know what's funny? I'm having flashbacks to doing our first episode.
Yeah.
I can't wait to listen to it after this. I feel like we had the exact same conversation.
I did not listen to it on
I did.
purpose.
I haven't listened to it in years.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it on purpose because I didn't want to I wanted to see how similar we...
I forgot we were covering this episode again until I got here tonight, so I definitely didn't listen to it. But I feel like you're saying things. I'm like, I feel like that's what you said last time.
Well, no, I mean, I picture, probably the people running the Park Service at the time were, career bureaucrats from like the 50s.
They ran it like a military industry. Kind of like, you make your bed, you do like salute, the whole deal.
So he was fired once due to his appearance and attitude. But he fought to get his job back, which added to this reputation of, someone who was not afraid to push boundaries.
A ne'er-do-well.
He wasn't,
in the eyes of the service.
He wasn't against, popping off the trail if he's on, a shift and maybe lighten up some of the marijuana.
Some jazz lettuce.
Some jazz lettuce. So he was known to... stop off the trail and kind of go behind a rock and, light a doobie and then go back to work. So like very rebellious, but honestly, at that time, not an uncommon thing. And he sounds like a pretty cool guy, honestly, obviously very knowledgeable about, the park. And he was very passionate about nature and his work as a naturalist. He really enjoyed curating exhibits, interacting with visitors, and creating educational materials like trail guides and plant lists. So, like, we're painting him in this like rebel,
rebel to the service, but like a great ranger,
a very good ranger.
Yeah.
Like, he was very knowledgeable. He loved what he did, and he probably got some joy out of like pushing buttons with like upper management.
Oh, I'm sure. I probably would have been just like him.
So
Like, oh, you know, I'm going to wear a ponytail. I'm going to wear an extra size ponytail.
yeah, but he had, so he obviously loved the park, but he also had a very casual, laid back approach to life. So honestly, he sounds like the perfect park ranger.
Oh, 100%.
Knowledgeable, experienced, but also like, he's not taking things too serious.
Especially at a small park that not a lot of people go to.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, you think, tons of people go to national parks now. It's almost too many people. Like, they're so overcrowded. But this was not always the case. This is really more of a phenomenon since COVID, really. The overcrowding.
Oh, where people started getting outdoors and they're like, oh, this is
which is
actually
great
fun.
that, people are going out into the wilderness, but it causes problems with...
Yeah, just don't go out when we're going out.
Yeah. No, I mean, it causes problems with trash and people don't stand trail. But so there were no medical issues that I could find. Obviously, his occupation was a National Park Service Ranger. Experience in the wilderness, experience in that location. Everybody considered Paul as a very experienced person, particularly in this park. He worked as a ranger and a nationalist. His responsibilities included answering visitor questions, creating trail guides, and curating exhibits, which I mentioned earlier. So obviously, if you're doing all that kind of stuff, you had to have a very strong understanding of the park's terrain, flora, and fauna. So very experienced guy, but seems like a really, really cool individual. Someone I would love to be hiking in a park and come across a ranger like him.
Oh, 100%.
So, all right, we'll jump right into the timeline.
This
So
actually looks really cool. Look at all those like spires. This is what they're talking about.
it kind of
It's all
gives me
compressed volcanic ash. That's crazy.
it's giving me a little vibe of like Zion.
A little bit, but it's just like they're so small.
Yeah,
Like such individual shoots. That's a lot of volcanic ash.
yeah,
Like hundreds of feet tall.
yeah.
That's cool.
So our timeline starts on January 13th of 1980. So this is a Sunday, and it's the morning. So that weekend, Paul had another seasonal female employee staying with him, and it was reported. Paul reported for duty that morning, and it was the off season, so only Paul and a seasonal employee were present at the visitor center that day. So, and Paul had driven this person staying with him up to this trailhead so she could hike downhill to the visitor center. So it's now 2 p.m. that same day, and Paul left the visitor center to check some trails. And this is what he told the seasonal employee. He was, like we said, dressed in his national park uniform, and he did leave behind his radio and personal belongings, including his wallet. So he wasn't expecting, to probably be out too long. This is probably something he has done every day. So pretty routine. So it's now late afternoon on the 13th, and Paul was last seen walking towards the park entrance to check trails leading to the Fairway Ranch, which Joe had mentioned this a bit in the location profile.
Yeah, it looks like when you enter the park past the sign,
Yeah.
the Bonita Trail Creek head is there, and the Fairway Ranch is like right along the main road.
Okay. So this would be the last time he was ever seen.
Okay.
So there were no reports of anyone else seeing him after this moment, and he did not specify which trails he planned to walk. So all we know is that he was walking towards the ranch, and that's it. So it's still January 13th of 1980. It's now about
That's cool.
okay.
This is the Fairway Ranch.
Okay, that is cool.
Yeah, for people watching, that I would go to this park monument just for this. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like an original homestead just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, go on.
No,
I was just taken aback by the beauty of this.
Yeah, it is really cool. I would love, and it's a small enough park. I feel like you could see it in a day.
Yeah, like you do the few big hikes.
Yeah.
And then you don't necessarily have to do an overnight there. Like
No.
play tourist in the park.
Yeah. So it's still the 13th, January 13th of 1980. It's now about 8 p.m. So when Paul didn't return, the seasonal employee staying with him grew concerned and went to see Ted Scott, the monument superintendent, who together with two other monument employees headed back out into the area to look for Paul. Obviously, they didn't find anything. So it's now January 14th of 1980, and it's a Monday. So the following day, Ted Scott contacted the Cochise County Sheriff's Office, which sent a search and rescue team, putting around 22 people on the ground plus one dog. So the 14th is pretty much when the formal search for Paul started. It's now January 15th of 1980. So on that afternoon, search efforts had expanded significantly. So now the National Guard is involved, the Southern Arizona Rescue Association, and various other agencies. Helicopters and dogs were brought in, and over 20 searchers combed through the rugged terrain. And they had a lot of really tough terrain to overcome. So, they're scrambling over rocky ridges, and they were rappelling into the impassable organ pipe formation. So, tough place to, even though it's small, the terrain is still pretty tough for searchers. They did at one point during that early search find footprints, but unfortunately they realized they had been made by another searcher coming up from below. So,
hampered the area.
Yeah. So
I do want to make mention. Look at, he's wearing that backpack you talked about.
What backpack?
This camera backpack to do the hiking trails.
Oh, he is.
Yeah. Remember we talked about how very few trails there are.
Yeah.
Of course, this park.
Yeah.
Like some of the major ones, and then this one. So random.
So rule that one out.
Yep.
So they were moving in a line like a string of Boy Scouts cleaning up a campground. They scoured most everything within a half a mile of the visitor center. But again, like we said, there seems to be some contamination of the search area. So the searchers are finding footprints from another search member, which is not good if your goal is to find evidence or tracks of someone who went missing. So unfortunately, could this kind of contamination of the search area hampered the search? Who knows? But it's never good when that happens.
Yeah, agreed.
So we actually had a break in the case early on. So a couple days after the 15th, they got a solid lead by an acquaintance of Paul, Dick Horton, and his wife, Joy, a Park Service volunteer in his 50s, who described seeing him on the afternoon of his disappearance wearing his uniform and slumped unconscious between two men in a pickup truck. So I remember talking about this years ago for the case, and this is a really strange clue to find. And when we get into theories, I think I'll explain my theory behind it. So obviously this gentleman, Dick Horton, claimed he'd saw Paul. So later in the month, so it's January 1980, under hypnosis, Detective Greg Emanuel had the acquaintance, this Dick Horton, under hypnosis, who described the truck and the men. Horton recalled that Paul looked sad and dejected. The pickup was dark green with a camper shell. The driver, he said, was in his 30s, had a Kenny Rogers beard, and was wearing a black, white, and red plaid shirt. The second man wore a green jacket, perhaps the one Paul had left at the visitor center. The green jacket that Paul had on when he left the visitor center. Mm-hmm. So this sighting led investigators to speculate that foul play might have been involved, but no further evidence from that sighting ever materialized. So it kind of was a dead end. I mean, I can imagine at first when they heard this, they're like, wow, we got a break in this case. And then nothing ever was found. So kind of heartbreaking. At one point, they did do a search of Paul's home, and they found that he left his wallet behind with $300 cash in it, a valuable gun collection, an expensive camera and equipment, and a truck he was restoring. So we'll get into theories, but if he was planning on just disappearing himself, he left everything he owned. So
yeah,
might not be a great theory. So the official search effort lasted for just about 2 weeks. His wife continued to organize groups of volunteers who over the next several years walked the trails, checked abandoned mines, and otherwise hunted for traces of Paul. But the wife and the volunteers held benefit concerts and relentlessly contacted Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater to try and get him involved. So a couple years pass, and then they get another lead in the case. So it's 1983 now, and he was reportedly seen 3 years later in 1983 in Bend, Oregon. In July 1983, based on new leads.
It's a huge jump.
Yeah. Cochise County Sheriff's Office official announced Paul had been murdered and that the arrest of more than one person was imminent. However, once again, this was a dead end and no one was ever charged. So I find that very interesting that the law enforcement would come out and explicitly say he's been murdered and we're going to arrest someone soon, and then nothing ever happened. So
yeah, that's a very wild thing to say.
Yeah, usually in the cases we've covered, the law enforcement is very coy about the case, and they're very careful to not, especially any law enforcement we've ever talked to.
Well, and
they're very careful to not really give any theories or opinions of themselves because they don't want to, I can understand why a law enforcement officer, if he gives a theory, people might construe that as well, this is what the official police statement is.
Well, I mean, this is not far from the Mexico border. Then to be he's in Bend, Oregon.
Yeah.
It's literally the other side.
Yeah. So
let's see how far this is from so it's roughly here. It's 50 miles from the border of Mexico.
Yeah.
That's wild.
No. So yeah, it's very, very close. And we'll get into in the theory section. I think that maybe have played a role in his disappearance, maybe not.
All right.
So now years and years go by with no leads, no evidence, nothing. And then in February 2017, they got a new lead on the case. So the Park Service decided to put its own individual on the case, a special agent named Clay Anderson. Unfortunately, the lead went nowhere, but the following year, the Park Service announced that it was raising the reward for information from $20,000 to $60,000. So now we're going to get into, there was some issues with the Park Service and Paul's wife. I do remember covering this the first time, and I feel like she really was probably mistreated at the time.
I vaguely remember this.
What they did to her, but so we'll get into it. Following his disappearance, the Park Service declared Paul was officially missing and posted a $5,000 reward for information. His family matched that sum. The service also started making partial salary payments to his wife, who is a scientific photographer at the University of Arizona's Lunar and Planetary Laboratory. In early 1981, Howard Chapman, the then director of the Park Service's Western region, reviewed the case and decided that Paul had voluntarily abandoned his position. So because of that, Paul was dismissed from his role retroactively, and his wife was asked to return the $6,900 paid to her plus 11% interest.
That's an insane thing to do to somebody.
Yeah. So, and then later they actually agreed to change the demand for payment and deducted it from his retirement fund.
So they really hated that guy.
I don't think they liked him.
Because that's such a small amount of money.
Well, back then it was more.
But even in the 80s, $6,000, okay, it's
20 grand.
But for the amount of effort,
yeah.
He left his wife and did all on purpose.
They didn't like him, and they were kind of sticking it to him, I think.
Yeah.
His wife.
What a terrible thing to do. What happened to that guy who did that?
I don't know.
Hopefully he's probably in Congress now.
You could Google him. His name was Howard Chapman.
Howard Chapman.
So his wife was told that no appeal was even possible because a termination hearing must be requested within 20 days, and the dismissal had been made retrospectively in the early 1980s. So she couldn't even appeal their decision because they retroactively fired him, which is crazy.
That's insane.
It emerged that on another occasion in the late 1970s, Paul, like we said, had been dismissed for having long hair and a handlebar mustache. After a dispute with the service, Paul was reinstated in 1976, and his back pay and benefits were restored. So obviously, some people higher up had an axe to grind with him. And I think just a really inappropriate way to go about it after a man disappeared and was probably dead. They go after his wife and, the money that she is owed. So it's bringing back my thoughts on it, and it just rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you didn't care for the guy, fine. Why do you have to be a jerk?
Yeah, right. So for 6 years, the National Park Service refused to list him as deceased, and his widow was unable to collect benefits.
Like, that was just, like, they're sticking it to her now.
Yeah.
Like, because they didn't like him so much. That's crap.
So in 1986,
pull this guy up and
the NPS and an Arizona investigator re-examined the case and confirmed his death, and his wife was finally able to claim full financial support. So
did she get back pay?
I don't know that. So unfortunately, that is where the timeline ends. And it obviously ended with nothing found on Paul, and it ended in a really sour note with how the Park Service treated his wife, who is still alive, I believe.
Dottie?
Yeah. And it's sad that, she's dealing with her husband going missing, most likely deceased.
Here he is.
He's got...
Look at that.
Yeah, I could see how that guy would not like Paul. He looks like a drill sergeant.
He looks like he
from
just
the
got
military.
done yelling at somebody for taking the picture wrong.
Yeah, he...
Boo.
I mean, he looks like that drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. You know the movie I'm talking about?
Oh, like Sergeant... not Sergeant Pyle.
No, not Pyle. That's the guy getting yelled at.
Yeah.
The guy yelling at him. The actor just passed away recently.
Yeah. He was actually a drill sergeant, too, in real life.
Was he?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't like you, dude.
Well, I don't know anything about him, but...
I know one thing about him, harassing the wife of a deceased park ranger.
Did he pass away?
I mean, look at that tie.
Let's not... did he pass away, though?
I don't know. Probably. I'll keep reading. You keep going.
Well, we're at the end of the timeline, so I can start going into all of the different theories that have
Just
swirled.
ruined any type of partnership with the NPS. I'd be like, you
Well, I mean...
talked poorly about one of our...
You know what? If that's the case, fine, but they really mistreated his wife.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they eventually rectified it, and...
Maybe he got fired, and then they fixed it.
I don't know, but yeah, that's a really crappy way to treat the wife of a park ranger who went missing.
Yeah, seriously.
So enough dwelling
All
on
right.
that.
Yeah,
So
I'll get off this one. I'm good. I'm letting it go.
let it go. Nothing we can do about it. Yeah, let it go.
I'm going to recycle that.
Yeah.
I learned that at my retreat.
So,
Shout out to all my Hoffman peeps. There was a fan there.
oh, was there?
Yeah, someone there, her name was Story.
Story.
Yep, and she was a huge fan, and she kept saying that she thought she recognized me, and then it turned out it was my voice.
Ah.
So that was kind of cool.
Shout out to Story.
Heck yeah.
So, going into theories. Obviously, the biggest theory that most people think happened was accidental death. So, this is one of the simplest explanations, that Paul may have suffered an accident while hiking in the rugged terrain. The monument's steep canyons, rocky ridges, dense forest could have concealed his body, especially if he fell into an inaccessible area. The theory is plausible given the difficulty of the terrain, but search efforts, including extensive use of helicopters, dogs, volunteers, found no trace of him, and I didn't find any evidence that the weather was bad at the time. And it's a small park, and the only thing I can think of is maybe he was on one of the trails and he did, took one of his little afternoon smoke breaks and something happened and he fell down into a canyon or something. But I mean, this one, while is the simplest, I don't know that for me is the one that I'm leaning towards.
Yeah. I'm going to shy away from the jazz lettuce accident theory.
Jazz lettuce accident theory.
I don't know. It just seems like it's such a small area.
Yeah.
The odds of him having an accident, although it's possible. You can
Definitely possible,
yeah,
yeah.
experts can have issues, but
I don't think he probably would have gone off trail much. like that day.
You really love touching your
I
microphone.
know. Sorry.
You're like, and you don't ever move it anywhere. You just
know.
touch it.
Makes me feel important. So one of the theories I'm really leaning on, and I think probably back in 2018 was the theory I picked, was foul play relating to drug smuggling or some other illegal activity. So this is a strong theory that gained traction early in the investigation, is that Paul may have encountered illegal activities such as drug smuggling or human trafficking, which were becoming more prevalent in southern Arizona at the time, and with the proximity to the Mexican border, plus the witness testimony that he saw Paul in a pickup truck, like slumped over.
Yeah, that's very odd.
People think that maybe he stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see and was silenced as a result. I think this theory is very possible based on the eyewitness testimony from Horton and the proximity to the border, the fact that smuggling, human trafficking, those kinds of things were becoming bigger in the 80s. I think this is a very likely theory and probably would explain why they didn't find any evidence of him. If he was in a pickup truck, maybe he got driven across the border and was sadly disposed of in Mexico. So that's another theory that gained a lot of traction, like I said, in the early investigation. Another theory was voluntary disappearance. So some investigators and colleagues initially suggested Paul might have left voluntarily to start a new life. He had a reputation for being a nonconformist and had experienced job-related frustrations. There was also speculation about personal relationship issues, as Paul was known to have had extramarital affairs. However, this theory is widely considered unlikely because Paul left behind his wallet, which we said had $300 in cash, valuable possessions like cameras and guns.
Yeah,
and
he would have taken that all
a
with him.
partially restored truck. Moreover, his wife over the years has strongly contested the idea, saying Paul wouldn't have abandoned her in such a way. And they mentioned job-related frustrations. Yeah, he had some issues with, management, but it sounds like he really liked what he was doing. The part of, being a park ranger. He liked talking with people, talking about the park, helping visitors understand the park. So I find this theory not very plausible in my eyes. Another theory is mistaken identity or a case of being misled. So this is a less prominent theory, but it suggests that Paul might have encountered someone who misled him into believing there was a situation in need of his help, leading him to be lured away from his route. This theory also speculative, but aligns with the idea that he was last seen in the company of two men in a pickup truck. So, this is kind of along the lines of foul play, but just kind of a different twist. A darker theory that people have suggested is murder, which again lines up with foul play. But this theory emerged years later. It said that Paul might have been murdered for reasons other than drug smuggling, possibly linked to a personal dispute. This was hinted at in 1983 when the sheriff's office officially announced that arrests in Paul's murder were imminent. However, no charges were ever filed, and the leads dried up. So perhaps he had some kind of beef with someone non-drug or human trafficking related, and it ended in his murder.
That's not out of the ordinary. I mean, it's out of the ordinary, but if he liked pushing people's buttons,
Yeah.
in a small area like that, and he just pissed somebody off enough,
Just a rancher off, or
maybe even the park superintendent that Howard.
Another theory that people have speculated on is cover-up or poor investigation. So some have said that the National Park Service mishandled Paul's disappearance, particularly in the early days of the investigation. For example, the MPS fired him for abandoning his post before later retracting that claim, causing financial and emotional hardship for his wife. There are also questions about whether Paul's case was taken seriously enough in the initial stages, contributing to a lack of progress in the investigation. Now, I don't usually want to lean on theories that, disparage the searchers. So that I'm not claiming the searchers themselves did a poor job, but I think what this theory is claiming is that the Park Service itself maybe slow walked the search early on when maybe evidence could have been found for Paul.
Do you think it was intentional, or do you think it was just him being him maybe and they weren't taking it seriously because of just the other stuff?
I would say that if all the stuff with his wife hadn't happened, with the park, firing him retroactively so she couldn't appeal it and making her pay back the benefits plus interest.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
So maybe this guy who ran that Western Division is kind of like, all right, well, we've got 50 searchers. Let's just put 20 on it. And they just kind of slow walked it. Like, they didn't not search for him.
Yeah.
But he didn't,
They didn't give it their all.
He didn't give it their all. And I would think if a park ranger goes missing, and we covered that other guy who went missing. I can't remember his name now. He was a park ranger. And
I do know who you're talking about. I don't remember his name though.
They moved heaven and earth to try and find him.
Yeah, it was like one of the largest searches.
They brought
ever did.
everyone, all the equipment, everything they possibly could to try and find him. So in my eyes, if a park ranger, like one of their own, goes missing, like you do everything. You get every available person in that park looking for him, not 20 people.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the searchers themselves did a bad job. I think the searchers are told this guy went missing, go out and find him. Like, they're doing their job.
Yeah.
I think maybe they just weren't provided all of the necessary equipment and resources to effectively do their job. And that maybe came from higher powers that, again, had an axe to grind with this guy.
No, I agree with that.
So this theory seems much more plausible to me. It's not deep end or anything. It's just that they didn't take it as serious early on, and maybe evidence they could have found disappeared due to, a scent is only going to last for so long. Footprints are only going to last so long. So that is another theory. Other theories that are not very widely held: a wildlife attack. Like we said, there's really not anything.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You got bobcats and cougars and black bears, but he probably wouldn't have been attacked by those. Psychological breakdown. There's been occasional speculation that Paul may have suffered a psychological breakdown or mental health crisis, leading him to wander off or intentionally disappear. While there's no strong evidence to suggest Paul was experiencing such issues at the time, some people have entertained this idea, especially in light of his reported nonconformist behavior and potential dissatisfaction with work. I don't think this theory really holds a lot of water with me either. He seemed like he really liked his work, and there was no outwardly evidence. Obviously, that's not an indication of someone's mental health, but outwardly he seemed normal. A nonconformist doesn't mean you're crazy. So I'm not holding much water in that. Another theory: witness misidentification. So some people have proposed that the reported sighting of Paul in the green pickup truck could have been a case of misidentification. The theory suggests that the man seen in the vehicle might not have been Paul at all, leading investigators down a false trail. So if the witness's account was incorrect, this could explain why no further leads emerged from the sighting. So
Okay.
that theory seems, that's kind of a sub-theory of whatever the main theory is.
Sure.
I think the fact that they had to use hypnosis to get this information out of this guy kind of makes that sighting maybe a little less credible in my eyes.
Great, Mike. You just pissed off the hypnosis crowd that are our fan base.
So, so these are that's the end of all the theories that have been floating. And like I said, this is an old case, so like there's been lots of time for people to chew this one up and come up with theories. So what's your leading theory?
I'm really glad I didn't listen because I can't wait to see which one I came up with the first time. I want to go with foul play or mental breakdown.
Oh, you're going with the mental breakdown.
Yeah, I kind of feel like
You think it's a...
I feel like cartel is a little too fantastical. I think it's very literally could be something.
Do you think it's like a marijuana-induced psychosis?
No, I don't think I mean, he was already kind of he liked challenging things.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was getting into scuffles all the time. Maybe just said screw it type of deal.
Yeah.
And if he's and part of me that got that way was the extramarital affair thing. So it's not like he was dedicated to his wife.
And
so
I want
like
to
someone like that, like if he's already screwing around,
read that right, just so I'm not.
yeah, go back. Like, 'cause
slandering him.
if that was true, then it could be like maybe he like if he doesn't care, just wants to get out of Dodge.
So it was just speculation.
But if it's speculation, then I mean, I guess maybe that could be people that don't like him slandering him.
It could be.
But if that's if
spreading rumors,
so if
yeah.
that's true, I could see him maybe disappearing and not caring. That's what I was
Yeah.
getting at. If he was like a family man dedicated to his wife, I'd say no way, he's not going to
Yeah.
abandon her. She'd be going too potentially. But it is real close to the border
yeah,
in the 80s.
early '80s,
Yeah, early 80s. So
earliest of the '80s,
Yeah.
1980.
yeah. So I mean, there could be a drug aspect to it. Drug running. Maybe he caught somebody if there's a main road that's going right through there still back then.
I'm leaning
don't know.
to foul play related to something drug smuggling illegal related to the border. I would think that, like they said, that kind of activity was growing, and that maybe because of the time of year, January, like there's only two workers in the entire park. Maybe
Yeah.
that activity picks up during those times of the year when there's very few workers in the park, probably very few. It's a Sunday.
Yeah, like they know they can get away with it.
They know, and like he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe like this pickup truck was just driving through and saw him, and like that was too much for them. They didn't even want him seeing them.
Yeah, maybe.
So they just scooped him up and they took him back to Mexico, and that's why they never found any evidence of. And then I think that coupled with potentially the early on the search kind of contaminating the search area might have led to them missing evidence of that happening. Like maybe there was like a little scuff. Like I can't imagine Paul just going quietly. Like if a pickup truck of drug smugglers drove by and like,
Yeah, he'd
they're
be
not just
fighting.
like, Paul, get in. All right.
Yeah.
Like they probably have to get out and like
Unless they
manhandle.
lured him in with jazz lettuce.
Yes, lettuce.
I love that. I love calling it jazz lettuce. It makes it PG, but everyone
Yeah.
knows what you're talking about.
But yeah, so I mean, because of the potential contamination of the search area, that maybe the scuffle that ensued, if these people were scooping them up, they didn't notice that because someone had already walked through there and kind of contaminated with footprints and
Yeah.
dog prints. So,
Or did that person contaminate it on purpose because they're involved?
well, now you're getting in deep end.
I'm going to the
So you're
deep
saying
end. We
one
didn't
of-
do a deep end on this because that
No.
didn't exist.
You're saying the searchers were in on the drug smuggling.
The deep end, I think that the people who in that area work for the NPS maybe worked with the cartel because he was such a nuisance.
Oh,
That
So, like-
Howard and maybe one of his minions
so you're thinking
worked
that
with the cartel.
a
and
couple
then-
of the MPS workers maybe were on the payroll of the cartel and allowed them to pass through the park.
Or they just didn't like him so much. They just kind of had an understanding and said, we don't like this guy. He could be maybe.
So now you're implicating a regional director of the MPS of working for the
Hey,
cartel.
it's off the deep end.
And then
Off the deep
basically
end.
putting a hit out on him.
That's my off the deep end theory,
Okay.
meaning it's fantastical, Hollywood-esque,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
mostly probably not true. It's a theory, so for
Okay.
legal reasons, this is a theory. And it's meant to be fantastical and more of like a
Fantastical.
story,
Yes.
more of a fiction
Okay.
than truth.
I'm not gonna go that far. I think
Even for off the deep end,
well, there is an off the deep end I didn't
you're gonna be like on the edge of the deep end.
there is an off the deep end I didn't include. They brought in it's kind of like I want to say like a clairvoyant or one of those types of people that said he
One
fell,
of those types.
said he went into a time warp.
Oh, like he entered
Yeah,
like a fold or
Yeah, like
a crack in the space-time continuum.
something like that. Yeah.
That's like way off the deep end.
Yeah, that's beyond the deep end.
Yeah.
That's
Bed Bath and Beyond the deep end.
No, so yeah, to bring it back to reality, I'm going with foul play.
I like that one actually. I
The
think
time
I
warp.
think that's probably actually what happened.
I should have included. I don't know why I didn't add that theory as a
yeah,
deep end.
I'm glad you remembered it. No, I think that's just what actually happened.
Yeah, time warp.
Yeah, just that he just stepped into a time warp.
Well, if it wasn't the time warp, I think
He just apparates in our studio.
Yeah, I think he. This is probably the same theory I had in 2018. I think he uncovered or accidentally stumbled upon cartel activity going through the park, and that's why he was seen in the back of a pickup truck. And I think they took him back to Mexico, which is why they never found any evidence. And then I think maybe evidence of a struggle when they went to grab him to get him in the truck was overlooked due to, search contamination early on.
Okay.
That is my theory. So let us know what you think about this case. Let us know if you're an OG, remember listening to the first one, and now you're listening to this one. Let us know what you...
I'm totally going to go back and like revisit the whole
how you
listen
think
to
we
it.
did. Joe and I did not listen to the old episode. And
Yeah.
like I said, we lost our notes, so I had to redo the entire research for this case.
You did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. And so, yeah, I think this is a really interesting case. I'm puzzled. This is a puzzling one.
Yeah. It is. It's a good one. It was a
great
good first case.
to kick off.
It's a great
Locations
114th case also.
Unknown. Yeah. So,
All
right.
That's it for us. If you are still sticking around, you should sign up for Patreon because I have a really exciting thing to show you. The guy who did all the Bear NATO scripts and the imagery created a movie trailer using AI video that we're going to play on Patreon.
I've not seen it.
And you haven't seen it. I've been sitting on it since before I went on my retreat.
I can't wait.
And I told him, I'm like, do not tell Mike you made this. I want him to see it
Well, he
raw.
created a new intro for our YouTube episodes.
Oh yeah, we're gonna totally use it. So yeah, John, if you want this, it's hilarious. So you need to sign on for Patreon, and then he did say he'd like allow us to release it to the broader
How
audience.
long is the trailer?
It's quick.
Okay.
So we're going to do that episode next. So go sign up for Patreon. Otherwise, thank you again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing Locations Unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and now YouTube once again, where you can find all the videos of each episode. Also, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, please visit our website or Facebook store to buy some sweet, sweet swag. And you can subscribe to our Patreon, YouTube, all the Apple subscriptions, everything but X still. And there you'll get access to special events, additional shows for paid customers only. And we got to do another live one pretty soon. It's been a few months. We'll be doing another live one. But lastly, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.